Morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
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 Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Morning.
No.
Just one more minute. We'll give for everyone to join.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Very good morning, Sarthak.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Sehan. How are you?
Fine, ma'am.
Okay. We'll start the class. Please open page 68. Swara, can you read?
Just a second. I'm from early life.
From the beginning, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
Okay. Ma'am, should I start?
Yeah, start.
Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, popularly known as Bapu or Mahatma Gandhi, completely dominated the Indian national movement from 1919 to 1948. That is why this period is known as the Gandhian era in Indian history. Early life. Mahatma Gandhi was born in 1869 at Porbandar in the Kathiawar district of Gujarat. His father was the Diwan of Rajkot state. In 1888, he went to England to study law. On completing his studies, he came back to India and started practicing law at Rajkot. From 1893 to 1914, he practiced law in South Africa. In South Africa, on a journey by train from Durban to Pretoria, he was forcibly thrown out of a first-class compartment, even though he had a valid ticket. Gandhiji was hurt by the racial injustice and discrimination to which Indians had to submit in South Africa. Indians could not travel with the Europeans and were not allowed to enter the hotels and clubs meant for the Europeans. Gandhiji soon became the leader of the struggle for justice in South Africa. During 1893 to 1914, he was engaged in a heroic struggle against the racist authorities in South Africa. He formed the Native Indian Congress and suffered imprisonment. He started his non-violent civil disobedience movement to protest against the discriminating treatment meted out to the Indians. The South African government had to listen to the voice of reason and in 1914 repealed most of the unjust acts against the Indians. Thus, it was during this struggle that Mahatma Gandhi evolved the technique of satyagraha, based on truth and non-violence. Gandhiji returned to India in January 1915 and spent the next 4 years in studying the Indian situation. During the course of 1917 and early 1918, he was involved in 3 significant struggles in Champaran, Bihar, in Ahmedabad, and in Kheda, Gujarat.
So, As we can see that Gandhiji, he was an attorney. He went to England to study law and he got qualified. And after that, he went to South Africa to practice law. Once he was there, he was a victim of racial discrimination and he decided to fight. And when he fought that, he developed this unique way of protesting called Satyagraha. Okay, he wanted it to be non-violent. So based on that, he believed that we should not suffer in silence and we should not, let injustice happen. We should not bear injustice, but he did not believe that you have to fight injustice with weapons or with any kind of violent measures. So he developed this technique called Satyagraha. And that was he was quite successful there, in South Africa in fighting for injustice. And that's when, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he went and met Gandhiji and he convinced him that he should come to India and fight for the Indian freedom struggle. He said, what are you doing outside? Okay, what are you doing in South Africa? Rather, you should come and fight for your own country. You should fight for the freedom of your own country and you should join the freedom movement in India. So he came back to India in 1950. Okay, so he came back to India and then for 3-4 years, he saw what was the situation, how the Britishers are thinking. And during this 3-4 years, he was involved in 3 small protest movements. One is called the Champaran and the other one is the Ahmedabad Mill Strike, okay, and the Kheda Satyagraha. Now in all these, this Champaran was the indigo cultivator. We have already studied about the indigo cultivators, how they were, troubled by the British. So he encouraged and he inspired the indigo cultivators to stand up using this method of Satyagraha that he had developed in South Africa. And the Britishers, they did listen to the indigo cultivators and they made some reforms. So what did they do? They at least, 1 minute. Yeah, so at least the British government was forced to hold an inquiry into what is happening, why the indigo cultivators are fighting and all that. And they were given better prices for, selling the indigo to the Britishers. Ahmedabad Mill Strike, again, they were given very less wages and they were made to work for long hours. So he fought for the rights of the mill workers. So again, that also became a success because the mill owners agreed on the 4th day of Gandhiji's fast to give a 35% increase in wages. Okay, so Satyagraha was a way of, silently protesting but not cooperating. And Gandhiji personally, he used to fast, fast unto death. So that was what he used to do. So people were forced to listen to him. So then Kheda Satyagraha, again, this was also for peasants. So these minor, small Satyagraha, that is not there in your syllabus. I'm just telling you that how his methods were successful. Okay, that Satyagraha, that method that he used, that was successful in all these 3 minor movements. And then it, the Congress also decided, why not use this method only to fight the British also? Okay, that's how he got involved with the Indian National Congress. And then, as we have already seen, from 1919 to 1942-43, that whole phase is known as the Gandhian phase in the Indian freedom struggle, because that was the time when Gandhiji was the leader and everybody listened to him and they followed the methods of protest that was advocated by him. So we don't have, please take your pencils and strike this off. Early life is not there. Please keep just that particular small paragraph in the beginning, introduction, that would keep it. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was known as Bapu or Mahatma Gandhi. Leave that paragraph. After that, early life. Please strike off early life. Strike off Champaran Satyagraha, but don't strike off the box. The box in 69 is there. Okay, page 69. That is Gandhiji's methods. That is there. So you strike off that Champaran Satyagraha and next page you strike off Ahmedabad Satyagraha and the Kheda Satyagraha. Are we clear? So now we are going to see what were those methods which Gandhiji used, which was so successful. Okay. So Swara, read.
Ma'am, should I read the box too?
Yeah. The box, you have to read the box.
The methods used by Mahatma Gandhi during the freedom struggle were the following. Satyagraha. The term Satyagraha is made up of two Sanskrit words, Satya, truth, and Agraha, insistence to hold fast. To Gandhiji, Satyagraha was a moral force born of truth and non-violence. It meant to be fearless, truthful, as well as peaceful, suffering willingly while refusing to submit to what is wrong. But even by resisting evil, it would not involve hatred towards the evildoer. Gandhiji's Satyagraha movement was directed against the British system of exploitation and not the British people individually or collectively. Gandhiji made a distinction between Satyagraha and passive resistance. Passive resistance does not exclude the use of physical force for the purpose of gaining one's end, whereas Satyagraha excludes the use of violence.
Okay. So Satyagraha means, in simple terms, insistence on truth. What is Satyagraha? Insistence on truth. That means you will not budge. What you believe that is the truth, you will stand up for it and you will not budge at any cost. But you will make a distinction between the evil and the evildoer. That means you will understand that the person, you should hate the evil crimes that are being committed by the evildoer and not hate the person. So what Gandhiji said, that we don't have to hate the British, but what they are doing is wrong. So we have to fight the actions and we don't have to fight, necessarily harbor evil feelings or hatred towards the people, towards Britishers. So please underline this. Okay. What is Satyagraha? First, that, insistence on truth. Underline that. Satya is truth. Agraha is insistence to hold fast. Underline. Then it was a moral force born of truth and non-violence. What Gandhiji believed that was that if you are not using violence, but peacefully if you're protesting, and if you are insisting that, if you show that what the person is doing is wrong, somewhere the person will realize that it is his fault and he is doing something wrong and may be morally persuaded to change. So he said that we have to bring a change of heart. If you use violence, that will only beget more violence. If I give you one slap, you will not realize your mistake. Why did I slap you? Instead, you will think that, okay, she slapped me. So that anger in you will be there, that I have to give it back to her. So you may slap me back, you may give me 2 slaps. So this will only result in a continuous, chain of violence. I cause violence to you, you cause violence back to me. So where is the end to this? And where is anybody, realizing their fault? So what Gandhiji felt was, don't use violence. Rather, you make a very strong statement that you will not suffer inside. You will not suffer, or you will not take injustice lying down. Fight for the injustice, but in a peaceful way. So that will create moral pressure. That will create moral pressure on the wrongdoer or the evildoer, and he will be forced to step back and examine his own actions. And probably he will understand that he is wrong, and then he may change his attitude and behavior. So Satyagraha was a way of changing the heart of the person. Okay. So that will be a permanent change. If the person who is making a mistake is realizing that he is at fault, then that is a more permanent, change in the person. So that is more important than, just causing violence. That is what he believed. So please underline this. Resist evil. It would not involve hatred towards the evildoer. Underline that. You have to resist evil at all cost, but not involve hatred towards the evildoer. Even the second line is important. It meant that you have to be fearless, truthful, but peaceful. Only that much you understand. It meant to be fearless, truthful, as well as peaceful. Passive resistance means sometimes in passive resistance, people used violence. So Satyagraha was different from passive resistance in the sense that it condemned violence very forcefully. So no violence was permitted in Satyagraha. Whereas passive resistance also had the same kind of belief. Passive resistance said that you have to, remember we studied about passive resistance in the previous chapter as one of the methods used by assertive nationalists. So what is passive resistance? Passive resistance means you have to stand up and you have to assert yourself that you will not, suffer, or you will not take all these unjust laws lying down. But in that passive resistance, sometimes violence was used. They did not exclude violence, whereas Satyagraha was very firm on not using violence at all. Okay, so Gandhiji's methods were, one is Satyagraha, that is insist on truth. Hate the evil, not the evildoer. Be fearless, be strong, stand up for your rights, but be peaceful. Okay, these are the keywords. Understood? This is Satyagraha. Next is Ahimsa. This was a very important part of Satyagraha. Okay, the doctrine of non-violence. Read.
Doctrine of non-violence. Non-violence or ahimsa means non-killing or avoiding injury. But for Gandhiji, it meant avoiding injury to anything by thought, word, or deed. According to Gandhiji, non-violence is not a negative but a positive and active force. It is the virtue of the strong which requires benevolence and sympathy. Mahatma Gandhi set an example before the whole world of achieving freedom from the mighty British power through a non-violent struggle.
So what Gandhiji believed was non-violence is not a sign of weakness. When you are non-violent, that doesn't mean that you are weak. Instead, it believes that you are very strong, because it takes great moral courage not to be violent or not to strike another person who is, being unfair or unjust with you. So it takes a great deal of courage to stand up, against your exploitators, the one who is causing problems, fearlessly and in a non-violent way. So he said it is not a negative trait, it is a positive trait. Okay, it is an active force and it is not a passive force. By doing non-violence, we are not saying we are just going to sit and submit to what is happening, what is wrong. No, it's an active force. It's a very powerful force of fighting. Okay, and in fact, this Satyagraha and non-violence was, lot of other country leaders also were inspired by Gandhiji's methods, and they also used it to get independence from the British. One is Nelson Mandela, okay, in Africa. Nelson Mandela in Africa was also, a follower of Gandhiji. He also used the same thing. Whereas there are other countries in Africa where they were using violence and there was no end to it. They did not get. This was a better way, and it proved to be very useful and powerful and fruitful, you can say. In India, non-violence really worked. Okay, see, one advantage of non-violence is you can get a lot of people to join the freedom struggle. Now imagine the masses, the normal people like you and me. If you ask me to join a violent struggle, I will not join. Did you understand? There are many people, normal people, who don't believe in violence or who cannot commit violence. Okay, so they will not be inspired to join a freedom struggle or any struggle, even if they think that it is right, if it is violent. But if it's a non-violent thing where you have to sacrifice something, then the people are more willing because it is for a higher cause. Did you understand? They know that you are doing this for your country. You are inspired by the thought, you're inspired by the feeling and the emotion, but you don't want to commit this thing, violence. So you can enlist more people. By non-violence, what Gandhiji did was he was able to get more participation. More and more people joined the freedom struggle and they refused to cooperate with the British, which was a very big victory for us. Because the Britishers did not understand what to do. They didn't understand how to control the situation because nobody is listening to them. Okay, and they were few in number and Indians were big in number. So if we all join together and if we fight in a non-violent way, the Britishers are at a loss, right? So that was the strength of non-violence. Okay. The next method is Swadeshi. Please underline only this part. Non-violence is not a negative but positive and active force. And above that, the first, it meant avoiding injury to anything by thought, word, and deed. What was non-violence? It meant avoiding injury to anything by thought, word, and deed. Okay, that much is enough. Swadeshi, come on.
Swadeshi. Swadeshi means producing necessary items in one's own country and using them for one's use, without being dependent on imported goods. Gandhiji believed that the use of Swadeshi goods would make us self-sufficient and eliminate our dependence on imported goods. Gandhiji emphasized manual labor and the use of the charkha and the khadi.
So we were continuously using British made goods and we were making them rich. See, we are buying their goods, they get the money, the profits are going to Britain, they become rich. So what are we doing? So he tried to make people understand that if we stop using British goods, that is also a very strong way of fighting the British, because economically you're hitting them. Okay, you are not using their goods, that means they will suffer losses, they will not get profits. In a way, you're making them poor. That's a stronger way. So they said, why don't we, and if we make our own goods and if we are, self-dependent, Swadeshi means produce your own goods and do everything within the country. So when you do that, you have a job, you have your own goods, and you are not dependent on foreign powers and foreign goods. So why not do this? This is also very important. It's an important part of our freedom struggle, where we do not want to encourage the Britishers and their goods and make them rich. Okay. So Swadeshi meant that you have to underline this. Using, being without non-dependence on imported goods, underline that. These are the keywords. Use of Swadeshi goods would make us self-sufficient and eliminate our dependence on imported goods. That's enough. That one particular line says it all. Okay, it makes us self-sufficient and less dependent on imported goods. Okay, mass movement. Last one.
Mass movement. The South African experiment gave Gandhiji the experience of leading Indians belonging to different religions, regions, and social classes. South Africa built his faith in the ability of the Indian masses to participate in the freedom movement.
So whatever he did in South Africa, he was, that was like an experiment that he conducted, and it was successful. So he got the confidence that these methods can be used in India as well. So now, Shreyas, can you read non-cooperation movement, next page 70?
Yes, ma'am. Should I start?
Yeah, start.
Non-cooperation movement. During the First World War, the Congress cooperated with the British. Even Gandhiji urged the Gujarati peasants to join the army if they wanted to win Swaraj. But the events of 1919, like the Khilafat wrongs, passing of the Rowlatt Act, and the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy greatly disillusioned Gandhiji. He turned from a cooperator to a non-cooperator and decided to start the non-cooperation movement. Non-cooperation is a way of protesting in which one does not cooperate with the evildoer. Gandhiji asked the government to. He said, non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as is cooperation with good. Should I continue?
Yeah. So non-cooperation is not cooperating. Some things happened in 1919. So non-cooperation movement was launched in 1920. So beside the heading, children, please write 1920. That big red non-cooperation movement that is there in your textbook. Beside that, you write 1920. That was the year the non-cooperation movement was started. But 1 year before, in 1919, a lot of things happened. Okay, which led to this non-cooperation movement. So what were the things? There were three things. One was the Rowlatt Act. The second was the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And the third was the Khilafat movement. Okay, so we will see one after the other. All these three things happened in 1919. Okay, so the first was Rowlatt Act. Rowlatt Act said, it was passed by Justice Rowlatt. Okay, and what did it say? It said it was an act, a very repressive act, you can say, which aimed at giving excessive powers to the police. Okay, so those days there were freedom fighters who used to have, who used to plan so many, protest movements against the government and that is called sedition. What is sedition? Sedition means any person who is working against the government is supposed to be doing seditious activities. Okay, you must know this word. So seditious or sedition means any act which is aimed against the government is sedition. And those who are indulging in such activities are supposed to be doing seditious activities. Okay. Now, since so many people were, involved in some kind of protest movements and all, this Justice Rowlatt Act, he decided to pass this repressive act, which was an anti-sedition act. That means he said, I want to check the seditious activities of people. And so we are going to give a lot of powers to the police. What it essentially meant was the police has power to arrest any person without a warrant. Now that is too much. When you are not even having proper warrant, why you are arresting? A policeman can just come on the road, he can see a person, he can just pick him up from the streets and say, I'm arresting you. This is the kind of power that put them in jail, keep them in jail unendingly without trial. What is the police supposed to do when they arrest a person? They have to produce him in front of the judge for trial. This Rowlatt Act gave the power to the police to keep a person in jail without producing him in front of the judge for a trial for any number or any amount of time. And finally, when the trial comes up, that trial also was not conducted in front of the press or in front of the public. It was an in-camera trial. That means only the lawyers and the judge and the accused is there in a separate room, in a private room where everything is getting recorded in a camera. Now that is again, it is all this hush-hush thing. All that is bad because you're not telling the public what is happening. The press cannot, protest if something wrong is happening with this person. All these were, dictatorial powers, you can say, a sort of, too much power to the police to do whatever they want. So Rowlatt Act implied arrest of person without a warrant, in-camera trial, restrictions on movements. That is, people cannot come together. They cannot, if 4 or 5 people are standing and talking, even if it's a social, interaction, that they will be suspected of sedition. Oh, why these 4 people are standing and talking? Okay, they are planning and plotting something against the government. Come on, let us arrest them and throw them in jail. So this was the kind of thing that Rowlatt Act did. And then suspension of habeas corpus. You all know what is habeas corpus, the writ. Habeas corpus means to have the body. That means if somebody is unlawfully detained, you can pass a writ and you can demand that that person be shown to you. Okay, if he's being detained by the police. Now, this was suspension of habeas corpus. That means if a person has been picked up like this by the police and thrown in jail, the family cannot even use the, go to the court of law, get a habeas corpus from the judge and force the police to show the person. That is, so many people can be killed in custody. Understood? So these are some of the bad things that this Rowlatt Act, it was too much. So this Rowlatt Act was passed, repressive Rowlatt Act was passed in 1990. Okay, now I will show you what is the time the class ends.
10:55.
10:55. So I think I have time. I'll show you a video. So let us see a video. Wait.